You left out my service in the Lincoln and Grant administration. Well, welcome back after the holidays. We now, unfortunately, have to get back to the task of dealing with national security issues, and we tend always to look, when we do that, at the next day's events. Particularly appropriate today, since the next day will bring us a speech by the President on Iraq, which is being advertised in advance as an announcement of an escalatory plan. In light of that, I thought it would be useful to step back and ask ourselves, what should we be doing in what the administration calls the global war on terrorism? Not immediately, but when the Iraq war is over. Now, I know that sounds like a strange idea, but only if we cast ourselves into the future and look at the things we ought to be doing in that future can we properly evaluate the near-term decisions that we have to make, including the President's escalation plan. So with that in mind, here is my thesis for today. When the President decided that we should go into Iraq, he did so in part on the justification that it was the central front in the war on terror, and that there was extensive connections between Al-Qaeda and Iraq. We now know, and most Americans accept, that none of that was true then. We're now going to be told that we have to escalate in Iraq because whatever may have been the truth in the past, Iraq is now the central front in the war on terror. Perhaps they will even admit that we have made it the central front in the war on terror. And that unless we succeed there, that there is no way for us to be successful in the global war on terror. That isn't true either. That's my thesis today. Let me walk you through why I think it. So let's think about after Iraq. Freddie Clay, somebody who I trust is not often quoted here, Freddie Clay, former Undersecretary of Defense in the Reagan administration, wrote a great book, which we should all take out and dust off, called Every War Must End. The Iraq War will end for the United States someday. And when it does, what would we do to improve our struggle against fundamentalist Islamic terrorism? Well, first, what would we do in Iraq? Let's define the end of the Iraq War for the United States. Primarily, it means, for the United States, the withdrawal of U.S. combat troops. Someday, there will be no U.S. combat units in Iraq. What will we do then? First in Iraq and then elsewhere, to address the threat from fundamentalist Islamic terrorism. What do we need in Iraq? The single most important thing the United States needs from its core national security interests is that Iraq not become, or might I say, no longer would be, a sanctuary for terrorists. It is today. That Iraq no longer be a training ground for terrorists, as it is today. Now, it would be nice if it were a democracy. It would be nice if it stayed a centralized, federated government. It would be nice if it exported oil. But the number one thing from the national security interest of the United States is that it not be a terror sanctuary. How, after we withdraw U.S. combat troops, whenever that is, how do we ensure that Iraq not become that kind of sanctuary? The way we do in other countries around the world. We try to work with the host government. And if that fails, we engage in intelligence operations. And if that fails in extremis, we might engage, as we apparently did yesterday in Somalia, in brief military operations. We can do all of that. From Kuwait, from Jordan. We can do it perhaps with the help of the future Iraqi government. Because any Iraqi government you can imagine coming into power, any central Iraqi government, is not going to want their country to be a terrorist sanctuary. And if I'm wrong about that, there are ways that we can deal with the lack of cooperation we might get from the Baghdad government. So we can achieve our major national security goal vis-a-vis Iraq without being there. In fact, being there makes it more difficult to achieve that goal. For by being there, we are attracting terrorists, and we are affording terrorists an opportunity to get trained by attacking U.S. and coalition forces. Beyond Iraq, what do we need in the global war on terrorism and the struggle against fundamentalist Islamic terrorism after Iraq? Let me suggest that there are 4 areas that we need to make progress in. First, as the 9/11 Commission called it, the battle of ideas. Our struggle of moderate Arabs, moderate Islamic countries around the world, the struggle of the United States and Europe against fundamentalist Islamic terrorism is at base and at root an ideological debate. It's not caused by poverty. It's not caused by military activity. It's caused by a version of the Islamic religion by a small group of radical theologists. We need to counter them. We need our friends in the Islamic world to counter them. We need to help them do that. That's not a military struggle. It's not even an intelligence struggle. We are now unable to successfully participate in the battle of ideas in the Islamic world because the United States is discredited in the Islamic world. Country after country, poll after poll reveals that fact. So one of the things that the 9/11 Commission said was essential, we are unable to do because we are in Iraq.